next speaker is Mary Edith Alexander, and she's a member of the class of 1984. Yes! Mary Edith is the curator of the corporate art program for Bank of America, so please give her your attention and your warmth. Thank you.
Can you hear? Okay, so I've rewritten this several times, but when Carrie called me and said, "Will you do a Quake Talks?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. And Cheryl touched on this, but the thing that popped in my head was a funny thing happened on the way, and for the older members of the audience, you'll know that refers to the movie and book and play the musical Stephen Sondheim did. A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum. But I thought it was really apt for the experience at Guilford and my journey getting to Guilford, which is not unique, as you'll hear today, is what I'm about to tell you is repetitive of everybody who comes to Guilford, because it's a very special place that people can find themselves, discover new things about themselves. And I think that my journey, is summed up best by the word serendipity, which we all know and love. And I had certain aims when I was in high school that I wanted to be an art major, and much to my parents' dismay. I was the 5th child of 6, and they just couldn't imagine I would be employed. The other thing, I was convinced when I was growing up in Charlotte that I was being buried alive, and I wanted to get out and get far away. And I knew about Guilford from my sister coming here, but she had transferred back to Guilford, and I kind of thought, well, I want to go farther away. So I started by heading up to Bryn Mawr College outside of Philadelphia, and it was not the choice of the New England schools that I had wanted to go to. It was the one that accepted me, and it was the farthest away of the schools that accepted me. So by those measures, I sort of followed that funny path and went up there. And I'd also been interested in classics and archaeology, and they had great departments in that, but I was not as happy there as my parents had wanted me to be, since it was double the cost of Guilford at that time. I think you all would laugh. Guilford was about $5,000 in those days. Everything. Don't you miss those days? Bryn Mawr was $10,000 in 1980. Yes, I'm old. But anyway, so, and my parents turned to me and said, if you are not very happy, you will not be staying. And you may not be staying anyway. And so, one thing and another. So I, threw myself into the classes and met students, and one student early in the fall that I was introduced to said, "Oh, you're from North Carolina? Why are you here?" I didn't respond. And they quickly realized how rude they had been and said, "Oh, well, I meant there's so many good schools in North Carolina." And I said, "I know what you meant." And left it at that. But as the year went on, I kind of thought, why am I here? If I go to Guilford, I can go to London. So I'll have fun. So back I came after that first year. So I should have been class of 84. I transferred in with the class of 85, and I finished in December. So I kind of ended up getting my degree in 85. So I'm going to have another 30-year anniversary next year. So I was, bliss. Got to Guilford, bliss. It was this time, fall. Look how beautiful the campus is. Everybody was nice. You go to the cafeteria, people would say, "Join us at our table." And the only class that was scary was Adele Wayman, then Adele Bruce, her black and white design class, and she started it off by saying, this is a weed out for art majors. I was like, oh no, failure. So I worked through that. I didn't open my midterm exam portfolio for like 2 weeks until my roommate said, I'm gonna look at your grade. And she tore into it because I was too nervous. So anyway, I went on the New York seminar with a ragtag group, and Adele. She ended up lending us all money because it was in the days before ATMs, and we all ran out of money and spent too much money here and there, and she was lending us money so we had food to eat before we got home. And then the next year I went on the London semester with Lee Johnson, and that was just, fabulous, touring all over. He was just marvelous. And then later I went to Alaska, probably the following summer, with fellow Guilford student, and had a blast out there, driving cross country. Greensboro to Seattle is exactly halfway to Anchorage from here, just so you know. Auto drive away. So it took us 4 days and a snowstorm in Butte, Montana in May to get out there. But spent the summer working in a restaurant, came back, finished working up through school, and just was in heaven. It was bliss, total bliss. And then comes graduation. So what do? I graduated in December, and I decided, I was a vegetarian working in a steak restaurant over here on Battleground or some Bentley's, I don't think it's still there. It was coming up to Furniture Market, and they wanted me as a waitress. I'm 6'2". They wanted me to get way down and lift a heavy tray with a lot of food back up and get it onto my shoulder. Well, any of you who are tall or have bad knees know the minute you get down and add weight, there's only one way you're going. You're going farther down. So I thought, this isn't going to be good. I can't lift this tray. So I quickly decided it was time to move home, give up the ghost, move home. And then I plotted to go back to London on a student visa in April of that year. So I kind of quickly did that. Avoided graduation, which I regret that I didn't walk, but I just didn't want to wait around any longer. So I arrived in London. It didn't occur to me that I should make arrangements for a place to stay before I got to the airport, Heathrow. So I put some coins in the phone, and I called this international student house, and they said, yes, we have a room. Okay, I'll be right over. So I just, from the airport, showed up. It was my luck that it was student spring break for them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have found a place to stay. It didn't occur to me. But I met this really wonderful American woman who was there doing kind of the same thing I was, and so we ended up getting a flat together and had a great summer. I worked at Crank's Health Food Restaurant, and for that summer I was in Covent Garden seeing all the things going on. The group Stomp were buskers then, so you all have probably seen that they tour now. Well, it's the old guys that used to do the actual performances or the choreographers now. And I traveled all over England and Scotland, and went down to Cornwall and up to Liverpool in Western Scotland. And at the end of that time I came back and moved home because I was out of money, and lived with my parents and worked in a frame shop, and then I worked as a house painter because that could make more money. And I thought, well, this is using my art skills, and my parents, dismaying that, please will you leave, want to get rid of you. And so I was trying to find something I could do and still have time in the studio. And a broken foot, speaking of serendipity, a broken foot put me out of work house painting because I couldn't stand on a ladder until I had the cast off. So it gave me time to think, what do I really want to do for the long term? And I thought, well, I want to improve as an artist, and I want to be a teacher. And so I decided to go to graduate school. And I applied to 5 schools, one of which, because it was near a guy that I was kind of interested in, and that was the one I got into, Cranbrook Academy of Art outside of Detroit, Michigan. And like Guilford, it ended up being the perfect fit. Encourage one another, it was just great. And then it ends, and so then what do you do? So a friend at school had a connection with a faux finish company in Baltimore. My sister lived in DC, so I thought, okay, I'll move to Baltimore. Again, I just showed up, lived at my sister's, went around looking for an apartment, then got a job, just kind of following what seemed to be the next course of action. And I was very happy in Baltimore for a long time. I was teaching part-time. I was doing house painting on my own, contracting, so I could be flexible to teach. I taught at an art center, a community college, and finally at a girls' boarding school. But after 6 years, I was kind of at the end of that. Teaching high school was not a good fit for me, so even though it was tough, I decided once again to move back home. And my parents are like, kind of, are you back? So anyway, but I was thinking of going into graphic design and doing all these different things, and just trying things out. But it ended up, even though I felt like it wasn't a successful move, that I was, going home with my tail between my legs, it actually turned in to be the best thing. I had more shows of my work. I got a grant. I was accepted to be an affiliate artist at the McCall Center for Visual Arts, where you do a residency and you can rent studios. So I was there for 18 months. I got hired by an art gallery in a funny circumstance of picking up a painting of mine from an exhibition. And my friend was the arts administrator at that organization, and I was in my painting clothes, loading my canvas onto my pickup truck, and I used to do very large, enormous paintings. So she said, "Oh, well, this gallery across the street needs someone to work for them, and there's the owner now." So, in my painting clothes, off I trotted, because I thought, well, you don't get chances all the time. Go. So I went, and I talked to them, and then I didn't hear from them for 3-4 weeks, and then she called and she said, "We want to interview you." Well, they hired me, and I was their first employee, and it turned out to be the most perfect job, because it combined framing skills, my installation skills. I had helped run the galleries here. I had helped run the galleries at the schools where I taught in the graduate school. So it turned into being the most wonderful job. It represented Southeastern artists. It was like an encyclopedia of learning all of Southeastern artists. And through that, I was able to get the job at Bank of America. Again, applying for a different job. On the light rail in Charlotte has an art component, and I was applying to the woman there for a job, and she forwarded my resume on to the director of the program at Bank of America, and I got hired at Bank of America, and have been there for 10 years. So if you had told me I would work for a bank back in the days that I was here, I would have said you were crazy. So in that job, I've overseen installation of artwork in various corporate workplace settings. I managed a team of contract curators around the country and one in London. We have 10 locations, so 10 curators. I have participated on big construction projects at the Ritz-Carlton and the new 1BAC Center in Charlotte, where with the Ritz-Carlton, the bank owns it, so we had to plan for the artwork in all of the public spaces, hallways, and guest rooms. And so I got to work with local artists, regional artists. We commissioned to do real artwork for the guest rooms at the Ritz-Carlton. And then in other public spaces, I Also, we've been able to put together shows from our collection. It's one of the world's largest corporate collections. And the American Impressionism show, which I was the lead curator on, has opened around the country, but also it opened in Seoul, Korea last December. So that was exciting. I didn't get to go, but I got to go to Tulsa to do a talk. So, anyway. But I also got to work with a time-based media artist who's Swiss, Beat Streuli. We did a big commission with him. So it was really interesting to work out contracts and come to all these things. And through that all, you know, everything that I learned at Guilford, you know, being a liberal arts major, being able to think across disciplines, it all comes to bear. And I'm reminded of a UNCG professor I had in life drawing, Andrew Martin, who said, only draw where the line changes direction. That's where it's interesting. And that's what I thought is interesting about the journey, anyone's journey. But being a liberal arts major gives you an interesting journey. So, thank you.